Good morning, everybody. Beautiful Saturday morning, and I thought I would talk a little bit about what it really means to work with nature. That's kind of a catchphrase especially in permaculture. That's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to work with nature. But what does that mean? This is the lavender, and years ago I couldn't grow it. I would buy it and plant it, and I tried all different situations or conditions, and it would always die in the winter. And I kind of concluded that even though they claim that it's hardy here, it really isn't. But then I figured out, yeah, it's totally hardy here. And the problem is it just needs a soil that stays very dry. So even in my raised beds where I'd added some sand for drainage, it was still dying out in the winter because we get so much rain and it was just getting root rot and dying. So I started putting it in pots, and I just set it in an outdoor shed for the winter so it doesn't get rained on, and just watered a tiny bit, and it really does well. So in that case, I just needed to kind of figure out what it was that the problem with growing it, and expand my knowledge. And now I'm able to grow it. There's another nice pot that was flowering beautifully. I just had to cut it back and hoping for some new blooms. So in that case, I just didn't know what to do, and I learned what to do. But what if you have something you're growing and it's extremely difficult to grow, especially because it's being attacked by some sort of pest, like an insect or a fungus or bacterium, and you don't know what to do? It can be extremely hard just to identify the problem to begin with. And then if you are able to successfully identify it, then what do you do? And the usual thing is, okay, so you find a plant, you've got an insect pest, like my famous eggplant over here, it's just covered with flea beetles. So then you figure out what to do about that particular insect, neem oil or diatomaceous earth or whatever, all the things that are suggested that are kind of more environmentally friendly than synthetic chemicals you go to the store to buy. But that kind of is all beside the point, because if you really want to work with nature, nature is telling you something, that it's not in balance and there's too many bugs and they love this plant. And if you put lots of energy and time and money into focusing on that insect, you are totally missing the big picture. And that's what permaculture is all about. You've got to look at the big picture, how everything works together. So my suggestion is, if you have a plant that is being attacked by pests, stop growing it. Because what is happening is you just narrow your focus in farther into this pinpoint, so you're just focusing on your flea beetles or whatever it is that's plaguing your plants, and you're not looking at the big picture. And you're spending way too much time and energy on something. Nature is telling you that it's going to be really hard to grow this plant right now because it wants to be eaten. There are things that want to eat it or attack it in some way. So forget about it for now. It doesn't mean you can never grow it. Find something that does really well. Grow some garlic or some onions. They're not really attacked by much, at least around here. I'm sure in other parts of the world they have pests, but just start out with whatever is the easiest to grow in your area so you can have some success, get a yield, and focus on the big picture, which mainly is going to be improving your soil. That's what you want to focus on all the time, really. And then everything else will just fall into place. as long as you have a water supply. I talk a lot about improving soil because I live in an area with extremely high rainfall. I don't really need to worry about water that much. There are lots of crops in here that I do not irrigate. Maybe when I plant the seeds, I have to keep the seed bed moist. Beyond that, very little irrigation. So that's why my videos are so much about just working on your soil. So that is my advice. If you have an insect pest and you ask me about it, or a fungal pest or whatever, I'm going to say just don't grow that plant right now because you are missing the whole point. Focus on the big picture.